Hello, welcome to the Lone Show. I'm your host, John Mayalone. In this episode, I don't have regulars on, because reasons, and so on and so forth. As for our guest, he's from St. Louis, Missouri. He's a podcast host amongst many. I can't stress enough how many there are. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Bob Lemon.
Hey, how you doing? How's it going over
How are
there
you?
today?
Going great.
How's the weather, as they always say around here?
Um, well, it's cloudy. Sometimes it rains, but it's a dry day, thankfully.
Oh, but about like here. It's kind of chilly.
Right now it is, yeah, which is
Yeah.
unusual at this time of year.
So is it really, really late for you right now? It's about 9 o'clock here in St. Louis Central Time.
It's nearly two in.
Yeah, I thought so. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy must stay up all night.
Oh yes. So what mainly do you do for a living?
What do I do for a living? Many things. I do host a show that I've hosted for a long time, but it doesn't pay the bills that much. And I'm pretty much just an office drone working for a not for profit company here in the States.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And how
Yeah, I
long have
mean,
you been working?
don't do much. I'm
How
sorry.
long have you been working? Sorry, how long have you been working in this sector for?
Oh, boy, we're breaking up a little bit there. Uh,
Us.
how
I
long have I been
said,
doing my
how long
job?
have you been in the sector?
Oh gosh, almost 30 years, I guess. I pretty much had the same job for 30 years, which really sounds extremely boring. Uh, but it's really not that bad. I mean, I don't know. Nowadays, people jump around a bunch, but I'm very lazy, and I also like to, stick around where I'm at. It's comfortable, so I just stay where I'm at. So yeah, so I'm assuming you're a little bit of a younger guy, and
Oh,
so how many jobs have you like over the course of the last 10 years? How many different jobs have you had?
well, I've just started out in the 10 so years, mainly
Mm-hmm.
starting out as a social creator in like I think it was 2016. Yeah,
Uh
sounds
huh.
about right. And then I've grown gradually. I've reached a point where I was recognized in public, and to this day, I'm somewhat recognized in public. Just that it's not the kind where people come up to you and say, "Oh my gosh, you're that guy from the internet." It's like, "Oh look," and they're talking about making references to some of the videos I made in the past. It's like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
I remember that reference. I talked about that woman and Clarice, and yeah, talk a lot of bada boom, bada bing.
Well, hey, that's cool. The funny thing is, when I was younger, I was always recognized, but the problem was I wasn't famous, and so it was kind of weird because I'm a bit of a odd looking person, and so people would think they knew who I was, and they would say, "Oh, you're that guy from," and they'd name something, and I go, "No, not me." And it would happen constantly. And so it became a joke as I was growing up. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm famous, but for what? Nobody knows." They're like, "Oh, you're that guy," and I'm like, "No, like, weren't you at this bar the other night playing music?" No, not me. So it's kind of have the exact opposite experience that you're having. You're actually known for something, and I'm known for nothing.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. To be honest, there were occasions actually that people recognized me, but for things that I have no knowledge about. One time,
Oh, really? Okay.
I was coming home on the tram from college. This one kid recognized me from a news story. a news channel for teens, children, whatever. It's something about the internet, whatever, and about it because I never watch said news channel.
Sure.
So yeah, but I do recall that I was at a point in my life that I was getting some form of recognition, but not people can like, oh, okay, I see. I think he was in that thing, whatever. It's more of like a secretive recognize me, but I don't want to make it obvious because I'm
Oh,
more of
okay.
an underground figure rather than the openly public famous figure.
Gotcha. So then do they do so I always experience, where people kind of stare at you in public, where they're like looking at you trying to figure it out. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously in my position they don't figure it out because I'm not who they think I am. But for you, do you get that a lot where people stare at you and kind of like are, kind of having a little conversation that you can tell they're like trying to figure out who you are?
yeah. I do. There were times every time I go in public, people do look. It's not the kind as like, wait a minute, why do I look? Why does he look so familiar? It's kind of like the stare is like, they a perceptional biased see me as the kind of bad guy to their story. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
guy who around stealing your girl and also yeah and
Uh-huh.
also I'm also a somewhat good looking guy, not elite
Uh-huh.
attractive but at least somewhat good looking. And when people do look at me, this kind of like a predator, a bit of a knobhead, and kind of like this pseudo macho who's whose IQ is equivalent to a rock. Like where did they got that from? But
That's funny.
things, but I don't show that as often because I try and stay
So you
humble
are
and
you hitting on everybody's dates
oh no no
or
no
you
no
just
no
look like the guy that
absolute
does that?
no I do none of those things. I me because if I do it the other way around, it will look desperate. They won't want it. It's
Ah, there you go.
it's a waste of time. So
You got it figured
if
out. That's a good way to go.
yeah, if they want me so bad, just let them have it. Because if you force
There
it
you go.
upon them, it just pulls them away even more. It's all about reverse
That's the way I
psychology.
play it. Unfortunately, nobody ever comes over to talk to me, so whatever.
Oh, that's
But
unfortunate.
but hey, I have my solitude that way.
Okay, I suppose so. But your day
So
will come
I
for
was
sure.
looking I was looking on your site and it says you're in your uh ninth season.
Yeah.
Congrats. So do you count a season as a year or what how are your seasons structured?
Well, basically, for my podcast, the way that my seasons are structured, I release 3 episodes. This goes on for 6 weeks. I take a 1 week break from editing and uploading episodes, and then once the 1 week break's over, process all over again. 3 episodes a week for 6 weeks, 1 week break,
Mhm.
and repeat over and over again, so on and so forth.
So
That
do you
for over a year.
Oh, cool. So you feel like you need that week to kind of recharge or get some other things going on or what's the week for?
Oh, it's just like a break to tell people,
Yeah.
okay, it's about to start, and also it gives me like a chance to like build like a, a block repertoire of
Mhm.
yet to be released episodes. So that way, in an event, I would go somewhere where I would to record episodes. At least I have the massive long queue of episodes pre-recorded. If I'm reached to a point in the year I'm unable to record any more episodes.
Okay. So then you do, let's see, 18 shows uh period and then take a week off, then 18 shows, then take a week off. Is that the way it goes?
Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
18 episodes a season, 1 week break, process.
Hmm. That's interesting. That pat is that. I haven't seen that pattern too many places, so that's why I was curious about it.
Okay.
So we just do a show a week, and pretty much every week just have a show, and don't we really don't take any time, any weeks off. To I mean, I can probably count on my hands maybe 4 or 5 times where we've had a week off because of something terrible, and that's about it though. So yeah, just kind of more of a I guess a television episode style thing. Other than they usually don't go all year, but so each week we just have something that comes out.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, and I've been doing that for 24 years now. That's crazy.
Oh, wow, that's mad. That's like the late 90s you've been doing this for.
Yeah, 99.
Sweet.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
older than
little bit
me.
silly. That's all right.
Yeah,
That's all right.
fabulous.
Yeah, it is. It's fun though. It's fun to do all that, and yeah, it's a little bit weird, and it wasn't the norm. Now it's more the norm. So we're actually finally, there was, podcasting came about in 2004. We were doing stuff prior to that, and then in 2004 it was a little bit known, and now it's much more known than it ever has been with Spotify and all that. So yeah, before I was just kind of, you'd talk about underground. That was an underground thing, and now it's more of a common thing for people to have stuff. So it's different. I kind of prefer the underground stuff myself, but that's just kind of my thing. But it is interesting that it's all kind of come mainstream, more or less. Because you mentioned you didn't watch the news program, and haven't watched like regular television in ages. I was just commenting this last week how I forgot that the Oscars were on because it's on regular TV, and I just read about it the next day when I was reading all my feeds and everything. I'm like, oh, the Oscars happened. Go figure.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it is kind of neat. I mean, uh, how we're really shifting, I think, as a society away from traditional media and into a more broader area, like yourself. And so you don't have to be always, connected to one of the mass media things in order to be out there and get some attention. And people aren't going there anymore. You know what I mean? So I mean, what's your favorite show? What show are you watching now that you like the most? If you watch any, I don't know.
Oh, I don't watch many shows actually.
Hmm.
It's been ages, but I have heard of a couple of shows in particular, especially one on HBO Max that not many people seem to like.
What's
And
that?
for many, you know that new spin-off of Scooby-Doo called Velma?
Velma. Velma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you like the Velma?
Oh no, no. It's quite the
Oh.
opposite, really. It's I don't want to be this harsh on a show, but after hearing what people have said about it and looking more into the details, I can understand why not people like it. It's uh, it's literally an example of what not to do when writing a show.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's not. I only watched one episode. It wasn't very good. I was very hopeful um, when I watched it. Because uh, I think it could be a good concept for a show, and yeah, execution wasn't the best. I don't think.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the case these days. I mean, there's lots of things that are, big. big names and all that kind of stuff, and it just never turns out. I mean, that's the sad part about things is it just you get kind of some people get their hopes up. You watch Game of Thrones or these other big shows like that, and then sometimes it doesn't always work out. But yeah, Velma was one of those that was kind of like a lot of good concepts, very very bad execution.
Oh yes. And even looking after Velma, I also looked back on the other so-called bad shows and realized, you know what? They may not be so bad after all.
Hmm.
So there's a better perception on the other so-called bad shows as compared to Velma,
Hmm.
as in how they write their stories, the executions, and different way of characters and plot lines, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
It just gets like a better idea on progression. We
Right.
make mistakes and we all move on and we develop as people.
There you go. And
Yes.
you move forward. I think so much popular media right now plays to don't the algorithm, right? So they're playing to the demographics, they're playing to certain algorithms to say we have to have this, that, and the other thing in the mix in order to make it watched by the most people and everything. And then unfortunately in all that they lose the art of telling a story. And it'd probably be better just to tell a story than it would be to even worry about all the rest of it, because there's a lot of like, did you see Everything Everywhere,
All at
the movie
once?
yeah, All at Once? Did you see that movie? What a weird
Well,
movie,
to
but
be
it was
honest,
fun to
I've
watch.
I've never actually seen it. I only
Oh,
know about it because of the Oscars,
right.
and
Yeah.
they've won 7 of them. Like
Yeah, it won a lot.
I'm not sure if there's a record for one movie winning as many Oscars as possible in one night.
Yeah, I have no. That's a good question. I got no idea on that. But
Like I can understand the appeal at the Oscars at the time, but you got to
mhm.
ask yourself, what's really going on behind the scenes? Is there some sort of negotiation that says, "Hey, check this out. Here's the reason why this movie is good, and the others are absolutely terrible."
This
And
right
yeah,
here is crap. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I watched it. It was a really bizarre, interesting movie. I mean, it would be interesting, I think, no matter what, because uh, it was not the norm. It did not fit. It was not cookie cutter. It wasn't a Marvel movie or anything like that. It was definitely different, and I'm glad that it is getting so many accolades. It's not the best movie ever, but it certainly was way more different than anything else you'll probably see this year. Um, Another one was the Banshees of Inisherin, I think is the name. I can't pronounce the last part of it, but the Irish movie was up for Best Picture. Again, totally against the norms. It was an incredibly slow movie that you couldn't stop watching.
well, did you know? Here's a fun fact: the two directors of the film is like friends with one this one famous actor that kind of went to my college, who's also directly friends with one of another former student of my old college, who also
Mm-hmm.
was at the time was an artistic director at my college, and I was part of one of his productions at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, hmm, that's interesting. A
That is
friend of a
interesting.
friend of a friend of a friend. Da, da,
You're
da, da,
doing
da, da, da. Oh yeah, there's a song from Eurovision. I can't. It's like,
gotcha.
oh yes, it was a vibe. But yeah,
You're like the 6 degrees of separation. You're like 3 degrees separated.
oh yes. So
Yeah.
So a staff, but also a former student who was at my college, I was part of his productions. Friends with a famous actor who's been on commercials and other television shows and movies
Hmm.
and theatre. Who's also friends with the two other directors of this so-called Oscar-nominated movie, The
Mhm.
Irish Getaway, or something, whatever. I can't remember the name.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Did you call it the Irish Getaway? Or is that what you call it?
Yes, Irish Getaway. I don't know why. Oh my god!
It's a good name. I think they should make that movie, The
They should.
Irish Getaway.
Why didn't they name it that?
Because I can't say
But
that it's the
it's
name of a
much. It
town,
was
I
much.
think, but
It was a much. It's much easier to remember for me.
yeah. Oh
Um,
no, it's a much better title. It sounds like an action movie, The Irish Getaway. There you go.
yeah.
It could be. You could have Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson star in The Irish Getaway, and it would be a hit.
Oh yeah. It'll get quite the attention for sure.
That's right. It probably won't win. Be Best Picture, but it'll be very entertaining.
Oh yes. And you get quite the publicity too.
Yeah, exactly. But but just going back to Velma, because I think Velma was trying to do some things and kind of tick a lot of these boxes, and those two movies that were fairly popular, didn't. They weren't ticking boxes. They were their own, creations. I mean, you would, if you watch it, you're like, it doesn't remind me of anything else. It's not derivative. So it's really interesting like that. And I think that's what now is happening, is there's so much being created, like yourself, that, you get so many different angles on things that, it's interesting to see all of the differences out there, and everybody's kind of doing what they want to do, what they like, and so therefore it's a much more interesting landscape for media, and I think that's why people aren't going to watch regular mainstream stuff. It's because it's not interesting. It's not different.
Yeah, and the publicity is just oversaturated. Like,
Right.
what's the hype? What's the big deal?
Right. Exactly. Like you mentioned that people talk about so much, then you want imply, well, what's going on with that? Because obviously it's being pushed. It's not being accepted. It's being pushed at you. And
Absolutely.
people don't like that so much.
Yeah.
Not these days. I mean, I think that used to work when there wasn't a lot of choice, but now that there's so much choice, like, I don't want to, whatever you're talking about, I don't care about. I'll go find my own thing.
Yep. As we all should.
There you go. And actually gets back to your whole thing about these women. You let them come to you. You're not pushing yourself out there. You're like, hey, I'm here, whatever. Stop by, don't stop by.
Mm-hmm.
I got my stuff going on.
Yes. As we all should. Yeah.
So what's a typical day like for you? I mean, you're staying up till 2 a.m. to talk to me, but what's your, if I can ask, I mean, you don't have to answer, but
I'm more than happy to discuss about it.
I'm just curious. I really am curious to hear what your average day would be.
Well, to be honest, it's not that exciting, given that I don't do much oftenly. Mainly, I just start the day just going on my phone, wherever, like going between watching YouTube, scrolling on Instagram and other social media, and occasionally I check on this platform to like invest in my cryptos, mainly to gain passive income in the long term, so I can establish my financial freedom, but also do good for this world, because society as we know it is starting to show its cracks and start to crumble down if nothing is taken action sooner.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you there. Unfortunately, I think the cracks have been there for quite some time.
And nobody gave a damn about it.
No, everybody's too busy, doing their own thing, or exploiting the exploitable. That yeah, they don't worry about that. So let me ask you about your crypto. So what's your uh, are you all Bitcoin, or are you into Dogecoin? What's your Ethereum? What's your poison there?
So when it comes to like certain cryptocurrencies, I try to diversify. So a balance between Bitcoin, Doge, Ethereum, Tether, US, USDC.
Hmm.
Yeah, I try to diversify my crypto as well as like have some amount of money invested into stocks as well and earn
Hmm.
dividends every
Ah, the
every
dividend
every
stocks. Yes.
every other week. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite dividend stock?
Well, to be honest, I don't have a particular favorite. It's more like a collect. I've got like a huge collection of different dividend stocks that I invest in, so that
Hmm.
way, at least every week, I'm earning some dividends from at least three or more other stocks.
Hmm.
So even if I invested like £100, I can at least expect 1 or 2 British pence
Hmm.
every other week.
Right.
And then the more I invest into those collection of dividend stocks, the more money, the bigger the dividends I would receive each week.
Right. Yeah.
And then once those dividends are then reinvested back into those dividend stocks, the chances of getting more dividends out of those stocks start to increase over time. So it's kind of like staking. The more you
Hmm.
put in, the more you get back. And if you reinvest what you get back, the number starts to increase, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a cycle. The more you
Hmm.
put in, the more you receive. And then the more you put into that, the more you receive back again. It repeats itself over and over.
No, that's good. It's fantastic. It's interesting to think about those things, especially over time. It's going to be uh, very good to you, especially since you're doing it now. Like you mentioned, you were younger, so it'll pay off in the long run if you can keep socking it away somewhere. That where it's going to do you, some good down the road. I wasn't sure if you were like into like Coca-Cola is a dividend stock, and then there's lots of other big name things like that, or if you had something that was a little more obscure that um, I'd never heard of. Uh, you know, that's what I was curious about.
Okay. Well, when it comes to like dividend stocks, I only invest in those that at least every other week I get back. I can invest in as many as I want, but what's important is there's a certain there's a certain density of what you invest into per stock and
Hmm.
making some sort of dividend out of that. You don't
Hmm.
want to spread yourself too thin just too soon. You got
Hmm.
to start you got to start small. You got to start somewhere before you can then spread it out to diversify even more.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And then what do you use for your crypto? What like Coinbase, or what's your where's your portfolio at?
So most of my portfolio is on a platform based in Singapore. It is
Hmm.
called Cake DeFi. Now, what makes Cake DeFi a, a big standout from all the other platforms? You can receive the biggest annual percentage yield for any cryptocurrency than you would in any other platform. Like for
Hmm.
example, their native cryptocurrency, this decentralized coin or DeFi for short,
Hmm.
if you stake into that, you get a roughly 13 to 14% APY, and you
Hmm.
get rewards paid out every 12 hours.
Oh,
And it
interesting.
and it, and it goes back to the staking thing. The more you stake into it, the more you receive back. And if you restake that and again, you receive more than you did last time, and so on and so forth.
Hmm. That's interesting. So every 12 hours, it pays out its interest in that kind of increment across the year.
Yeah,
Oh, that's wild. So it basically does like two cycles a day At every 12 hours, you get 2 cycles a day. How many cycles would that be? Now I got to get my calculator out here. 365 times 2. That's 730 cycles in a year. Well, depending on leap year and everything. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's pretty wild. That's
Oh,
interesting.
oh yes.
And so, were you part of like early crypto? So like whenever everybody's like, "What's that?" Were you already in it, or did you come a little bit later?
I came in a little later, but I seized the opportunity as soon as I can. So
Yeah,
if I seize the opportunity now, it will pay off later on in the next few years.
yeah, that sounds good. So what made you? I mean, obviously, social media and so forth, but why are you podcasting? Because that's a little bit. So social media to me is generally a short form kind of a situation. So like with TikTok or Twitter or whatever, it's all very short form, short format kind of stuff. But podcasting is more of a long format. And
Yeah.
so, what was the kind of antithesis? What made you go in that direction?
So basically, the reason I got into podcasting, this goes back like a year or two ago, back in April 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this time, I was part of this. I was mainly active on this platform called Byte. This
Mm-hmm.
platform is not like any other platform. It was created by the same guy that founded Vine. That's why it made it so special. So when
Mm-hmm.
people see that kind of information, it's like, oh, it's like a redemption of Vine. I could be famous. And with
Right.
people with that kind of expectation, they get very let down very quickly. So whenever they feel, oh, you know what? What's the point? I'm wasting my time. They just jump off the platform and go somewhere else. The
Right.
usual suspects like TikTok, Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, and YouTube Shorts, of course. So anyway, April 2021, I was like past part of the point where Byte was past its prime. There's this guy from Scotland, more specifically the outer regions of Glasgow. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yes, Glasgow. Go to Scotland. I do love to be
Scotland.
a Scotty lad. So this guy was named Risk 11. He was the leader of a content creator group called Team Sketch, would then like to become Team Sketch Network or TSN for short. So we were doing we were making content for Byte and other social media platforms for like over nearly 2 years now. And one day in mid-December, actually early December 2021, Risk 11 asked me about starting my own podcast after doing a couple of appearances on the Team Sketch podcast. And he was like, I told him, you know what? It would be interesting to have my own podcast. He gave me the green light, and I started getting to work.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So
cool.
at first, I don't know anything about podcasting. I did my research about how to get bookings and what platform to use, and everything sorted itself out along the way. And it was on December 5th, 2022. Fun fact, it was my birthday on that day. That was the day my first ever podcast episode was released. I was from
Oh,
there.
cool.
It was from there. I was asking more people to make appearances on my podcast. I managed to look at different places to ask guests to appear, and I managed to extend my clientele over the last few weeks and months. So it has now been over a year now. It's my 1 year anniversary, and to celebrate my 1 year anniversary, and especially after a long break, after getting so many guests, I thought I should ask a couple of my former podcast guests to make a return appearance, and maybe do that like every year on my anniversary to ask old guests to appear back again. And yeah, and that's how we got here today.
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, obviously you're having fun. It's it always is interesting to me. how small the world gets when you do things like this. Because I was just telling my son, I tell him, I'm getting ready to record something, and he goes, "Oh, who are you talking to?" And I said, "I'm talking to a guy from Manchester, I think,
Yeah.
England tonight." Yeah,
Hmm. Oh yes,
and
absolutely.
and so it's like, oh, now even 10 years ago or so, that would have sounded outrageous, but now it's perfectly normal,
Yeah.
almost
It's
pedestrian in a way sometimes.
it's
Oh
all
yeah,
coming
of
together.
course, of course. And so it makes the connection, with people a lot more easier and more free, and I think it also makes it very interesting. So
Oh yeah.
have you ever been over to the United States on any of your travels?
Nope, not once, but I want
Do
to
you
someday.
want to?
Yes, exactly. That's why I said I want to.
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
So I know St. Louis probably wouldn't be high on the list if you're going to come over. There's lots of other more interesting places to go. But what would be if your stocks pay, if your crypto went through the roof and you could travel, uh, and you came over to the States, what would be like your top 5 destinations?
Well, besides New York and LA, for
Mm-hmm.
obvious reasons, I there are like specific states I want to visit, like Portland and Oregon. I
Mm-hmm.
do like to visit some of the Midwest. Texas is one.
Chicago.
Yes,
Yeah.
Texas is one of them.
Oh boy,
And
Texas. Whew.
yep,
Okay. It's
and I may
hot in the
also.
summertime.
Oh yes, it sure is. And also, I also may want to visit parts of Florida as well, because the coastline and there's some form of wealthy living to some extent.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. So, is there any place that you would like to go that would be kind of obscure to most people? It'd be like, really? You want to go there?
Actually, there's not like a specific obscure place, but more like general obscure places. Like I want to visit more of the mountain regions, like Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
Indiana, also Wyoming, because it's very rural amongst all the 50 states.
Oh, yes, very, very much so.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
also want to visit a couple of towns and villages along the US-Mexican border
Mm-hmm.
because it's interesting to see the intertwine between the peoples of those two countries. Like, how the fuck do they live their lives? That's mad.
You're gonna laugh, but you don't have to go to the border. There are communities well inside the United States that speaks, Spanish speaking areas, and funny that the permeation of people speaking Spanish in the United States is much higher than you'd think, and you don't have to be on the border to be experience that. It's really kind of interesting. There's a little town in Missouri where, and this is way north on the Mississippi, that there's still a lot of Spanish speaking people, and so you go there and it's you're like, I'm in the middle of the Midwest, and yet I'm listening to Spanish. And you wouldn't think that, but it's just the migration of people to different areas of the states has been pretty pervasive, and so it's really kind of interesting, though. Um, so you don't have to be on the border to experience that necessarily. Obviously, there's more there. It's more mixed as far as that goes, cultures, but it's not exclusive to there. There's no, it's not like a fade, you know what I mean? So it really is peppered throughout. There's parts of Chicago where you can go and everybody speaks Chinese, and Chinese is all over the signs in communities. And so, I know it's more prevalent, I think, in Europe to see things like that, and at least on television for the States, it's not quite as prevalent to show that, but there is. It's really quite fascinating. So you could be in downtown in Chicago and walk around a corner, and then all the signs are in Chinese. So it's wild.
Wow, fabulous.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And but I would say, yeah, um, uh, in California, Los Angeles, in the city, there's a place called Koreatown, and everything is in Korean. I mean, you walk
Ooh,
down the street and all the signs are in Korean, and you go to restaurants and they'll all be speaking Korean. I mean, it, it's very normal.
wow.
And yeah, so if you get to go out there, you should swing by because it's really good food, by the way. So
Oh yes, the food, the
yeah,
best.
the best. So yeah, I was out when was it? June. I was in Los Angeles, and we were in Koreatown, and we had Korean barbecue was what we would call it, but and they have where they cook your food right in the table. There's like a grill in the middle of the table, and then you kind of cook your own food. It's interesting. I'd
Mm.
never done that myself, so it was interesting to me. You may have experienced that already, but I was like, wow, this is wild. I could really burn myself sitting here, but they trust me. They trust me with this gas operated grill in the middle of my table. So it's kind of wild. But
Oh yeah.
anyhow, but I mean, just about any of the big cities nowadays, there are even in St. Louis, there's a big Bosnian culture, and you can go and in that neighborhood, and it's very uh, you know culturally it's very Bosnian. So it's a really interesting. Now, if you drive out in the country a ways, it's a little more stereotypical rural America, but in a lot of the cities, it's not. So,
Oh yes.
but I had another question for you. So I would say, yeah. So if you get to come over, obviously New York and Los Angeles are very interesting. I would say New York has way more to do than Los Angeles if you go there. I mean, there's lots of stuff to do in Los Angeles, but as far as to see stuff, it takes forever to drive around Los Angeles, where you can kind of walk around New York and see a bunch of things that you'll recognize. And uh, then Chicago is just a fantastic city to visit. St. Louis, not so bad. It's not as big as those other places as far as that goes. Kansas City, really interesting town here in the Midwest. If you get to go there, lots of great architecture and stuff like that. Not anything like over in Europe, but for America, it's pretty cool.
All right then. Sounds good. And that's all we have for this episode. It was great having you here, Bob, talking about a lot of things. And I mean a lot of things. It's been fabulous.
Hey, thanks for having me. Sorry, I didn't get my cue there.
It's all right. It happens. And until next time, stay tuned for more.